Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure to be back.
Today, we're going to be looking at President Trump's executive order that aims to end birthright citizenship for children of undocumented immigrants,
Right.
and those here on temporary visas.
Huge topic.
Yeah, it's a big one, especially since the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals just blocked the order.
Big news.
So we've got a CNN article that breaks down this whole legal battle and what this decision could mean moving forward.
It's definitely an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, so to really understand what's at stake here, let's just take a quick step back.
Sure.
Can you give us like a quick rundown of birthright citizenship as it exists right now?
Yeah, so birthright citizenship in the U.S. is rooted in the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which was ratified back in 1868.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, a lot of people don't know this, it was actually first codified into law by the Civil Rights Act of 1866.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, so both the Act and the 14th Amendment enshrine the principle that anyone born on U.S. soil is automatically a U.S. citizen, regardless of their parents' citizenship status.
Interesting.
So this has been the standard in the U.S. for over a century and a half.
Okay, so that's the historical backdrop, but how does Trump's executive order try to change this long-standing principle?
Well, Trump's order specifically targets children born in the U.S. to undocumented immigrants and those on temporary visas.
Okay,
So if the order were to go into effect, these children would no longer be automatically granted U.S. citizenship at birth.
gotcha.
And the Justice Department's argument is that this is a crucial part of President Trump's broader strategy to address immigration concerns and the situation at the southern border.
Framing it as a matter of immigration control.
Right.
I feel like that's got to be a strategic move.
For sure.
I wonder how that influences how people view the legality of the order
Oh, absolutely.
versus like focusing solely on the question of presidential power.
Yeah, I mean, how this issue is framed definitely impacts public perception
Mm-hmm.
and could even sway legal interpretations.
Right.
I mean, it raises the question, is this really about managing immigration, or is it an attempt to redefine citizenship itself? And
Huh.
if so, does the president have the authority to do that?
Exactly. And that brings us to, I think, the heart of the legal challenges against the order.
Right.
The CNN article mentions that the lawsuit was initially brought by Democratic Attorney General from 4 states,
Yes.
led by Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little more about their argument?
Yeah, so these attorneys general contend that the executive order is a direct overreach of presidential power.
Okay.
They argue that this case isn't about immigration at all, but about the fundamental right to citizenship as guaranteed by the 14th Amendment,
Mm-hmm.
a right they say the president can't simply erase with an executive order.
So you have this long-standing constitutional guarantee,
Right.
and then an executive order that seemingly tries to sidestep it.
It definitely creates an interesting legal dilemma.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think the Ninth Circuit's decision to block the order, at least for now, seems to suggest they agree that this raises some serious constitutional concerns.
Well, speaking of the Ninth Circuit, the article pointed out that this is just one of several challenges to Trump's order,
Correct.
but it's the first to be reviewed by an appeals court panel.
Exactly.
So what makes this case and the Ninth Circuit's decision so significant?
Well, this case marks the first time an appeals court has weighed in on the legality of the order, which sets a precedent for future rulings.
Uh-huh.
And also, the makeup of the Ninth Circuit panel itself is pretty interesting.
Okay.
It includes a judge appointed by Trump, one by Carter, and one by George W. Bush.
Wow.
So the fact that they unanimously upheld the block on the order, even with a Trump appointee on the panel,
Yeah.
sends a strong message about the potential legal vulnerabilities of this executive order.
It definitely makes you wonder what will happen if or when this case reaches the Supreme Court.
Oh, for sure.
And it brings up another question about the president's authority.
Absolutely. This case has the potential to set a major precedent, not just for birthright citizenship, but for the limits of presidential power in general.
Yeah.
It makes us really think about, how much power does the president have to enact these policy changes that might conflict with the Constitution?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And, it's just fascinating to see how this case fits into, like, the broader context
Yeah.
of historical debates about presidential authority. I mean, there have been so many instances throughout history where presidents have pushed the boundaries of their power,
Absolutely.
especially when it comes to immigration.
You're right. There's a very long and complicated history of executive actions on immigration,
Yeah.
some of which have faced legal challenges very similar to what we're seeing now with Trump's order.
Interesting.
It really highlights that tension that can exist between the executive branch's desire to act swiftly on policy matters
Right.
and then that need to ensure that those actions comply with the Constitution.
Well, the CNN article mentioned the Justice Department's argument
Right.
that this executive order is necessary to address the situation at the southern border,
Mm-hmm.
but it also mentioned that opponents see this as a dangerous overreach of presidential power.
Yes.
So how do these competing perspectives, shape the legal debate surrounding this case?
Well, it's a classic example of how different interpretations of the law
Right.
and different priorities can lead to conflicting viewpoints.
Of course.
So the Justice Department is essentially arguing that the president has this broad authority to set immigration policy,
Uh-huh.
and that this order falls within those powers.
Uh-huh.
Their focus is on the perceived need for stricter immigration controls,
Okay.
but the opposing side emphasizes those potential long-term consequences of allowing the president to just unilaterally alter a right that's been enshrined in the Constitution for over 150 years.
Yeah.
So they're concerned about the precedent it sets for other constitutional rights.
So it's not just about this one executive order
Right.
and its immediate impact,
No.
but the larger implications for the balance of power between the different branches of government.
Exactly. The Ninth Circuit's decision to uphold the block on the order
Yeah.
could be interpreted as an attempt to protect that balance.
Mm-hmm.
They're essentially saying, let's pump the brakes
Right.
and just make sure this is being done constitutionally with proper consideration for all sides.
It's kind of like one of those things where, it makes me think about all those other times in history
Yeah.
where a particular case or legal decision
Right.
has had a ripple effect
Mm-hmm.
leading to broader societal changes. This birthright citizenship case feels like it could be one of those pivotal moments.
I think your spot on this case is about way more
Yeah.
than just the legal nuances of birthright citizenship.
Uh-huh.
It taps into these really fundamental questions about, what it means to be American, who gets to decide that,
Yeah.
and what role the president should play in shaping those definitions.
Absolutely.
So it's a debate that really goes beyond legal arguments,
Mm.
and it touches on these deeply held beliefs about national identity and belonging.
And it also raises questions about how these legal battles impact real people's lives.
Oh, totally.
I mean, we're talking about potentially changing the citizenship status of
Yeah.
children born in the U.S. What kind of uncertainty and fear does that create
Oh, absolutely.
with families who might be affected by this executive order?
I mean, that's a crucial point that often gets lost in the legal back and forth.
Right.
The human impact of this case is huge. We're talking about families living in limbo,
Yeah.
unsure of their rights and their future in this country.
Right.
The uncertainty and anxiety that they face is immense, and it's something we just cannot overlook
Yeah.
as we discuss the legal intricacies of this case.
It's a good reminder that legal decisions aren't just these abstract concepts.
Right.
They have real-world consequences for individuals and families across the
Absolutely.
country.
Yeah.
And it's important to keep that in mind as we try to make sense of this complex issue.
I completely agree. Sometimes we get so caught up in the legal arguments and the political maneuvering
Yeah.
that we forget about the human faces behind these cases.
Right.
But their stories are essential to understanding the full scope of the issue.
Okay, so we've covered the history of birthright citizenship,
Right.
the specifics of Trump's executive order,
Mm-hmm.
the arguments on both sides,
Yes.
and the potential impact on families.
Yeah.
We also touched on the broader implications for presidential power and the balance of government.
Mm-hmm.
What are some key takeaways you think our listeners should walk away with from this deep dive?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that this case really represents a crucial intersection of law, politics, and personal identity.
Yeah.
It forces us to grapple with some fundamental questions about what it means to be a citizen who gets to define that
Mm-hmm.
and how those definitions can be changed.
Right.
It's a reminder that the law isn't static.
Yeah.
It's constantly evolving as we face new challenges
Right.
and grapple with our changing understanding of what it means to be an American.
I like that the law is constantly evolving. It
Yeah.
makes you think, could this case end up being one of those landmark decisions
Oh,
that
yeah.
kind of redefines our understanding of citizenship
Yeah,
in the
absolutely.
21st century?
It definitely has the potential to be a watershed moment, and regardless of what the Supreme Court's eventual ruling is,
Right.
I think the debate surrounding birthright citizenship is going to continue. I
Yeah.
mean, it just taps into such deeply rooted beliefs about national identity and belonging
Right.
that it's unlikely to just fade away anytime soon.
Well, this CNN article really highlights just how complex this issue is
Yeah.
and how much is at stake, not just legally,
Right.
but for the individuals and families that are directly affected.
Absolutely.
And, it's clear that there are valid points to be
Oh,
made
for sure.
on both sides of this argument.
It's important to recognize that this isn't just a simple black and white issue. I
Right.
mean, there are some legitimate concerns about the potential for abuse of birthright citizenship,
Yeah,
and those concerns shouldn't be dismissed.
of course not.
But at the same time, we have to be cautious
Hmm.
about any attempts to curtail a right that has been so central to our understanding of American citizenship for so long.
It seems like finding that solution that addresses both of those concerns, the concerns about potential abuse
Right.
and the need to protect fundamental rights,
Yeah.
is going to be a real challenge.
It's a balancing act, for sure.
Yeah.
And it'll probably require a lot of careful consideration and
Right.
compromise from all sides.
Right.
I think the outcome of this case and just the broader debates surrounding birthright citizenship will have like a lasting impact on the fabric of our nation.
So to kind of wrap up this deep dive,
Okay,
let's go for some key takeaways for our listeners.
sure.
So we talk by exploring the concept of birthright citizenship.
Right.
Its historical roots in the 14th Amendment and the Civil Rights Act of 1866,
Uh-huh.
and how it's been the standard here in the U.S. for over 150 years.
Yeah.
We then went into President Trump's executive order,
Yes.
which aims to end birthright citizenship for children born to undocumented immigrants and those on temporary visas.
That's right.
And then we unpacked those arguments for and against the order,
Mm.
really highlighting those concerns about executive overreach and the potential impact this has on families and individuals.
Absolutely.
And of course, we talked about the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision to uphold the block on the order,
Yes.
a decision that could pave the way for a Supreme Court showdown,
Potentially.
which could have major implications for the future of birthright citizenship in the U.S.
Definitely.
It's a case that really forces us to, confront some tough questions
Yeah.
about, the limits of presidential power, the evolving nature of citizenship, and those values that define our nation.
Right.
So here's a final thought for you, our listener.
Okay.
As you continue to kind of follow this case and the broader debate around birthright citizenship,
Yeah.
consider this. What do you believe are the essential elements of American citizenship?
That's a good question.
And how do those beliefs inform your views
Mm-hmm.
on this complex and evolving issue?
Keep those questions in mind as you
Mhm.
learn more about this topic. I mean,
Mhm.
there's so much information out there.
Right.
It's really up to each of us to stay informed, engage in thoughtful discussion, and just form our own conclusions based on the facts
Right.
and our understanding of what it truly means to be an American.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep those brains buzzing.
Always a good idea.